the wait is over. Invincible Season 3 is done. Finally! And the show has been through a lot since it started. For starters, there's the endless debate about whether Invincible's animation is good or not.
You ever notice that sometimes whoever's speaking has their mouth off camera so you never see their lips moving?
Huh, I didn't notice that.
Are you sure?
Amazon kind of baited us with the teaser trailers, since they have better animation than the show, in my opinion. Also, a mid-season break that lasts 4 months.
Okay, it was more like 3.5.
Fine! What's 17 more years?
Doesn't really make sense if they're making something that looks like a DC animated show from 10 years ago.
But on the other hand, while the show is JPEG Vincible at times, it has really good moments. The art style translates the comic book aesthetic pretty well, and in my opinion, it just goes to show that animation is the more creative medium for these adaptations. All in all, I don't even mind the animation even when it's less than ideal. It does its job. I mostly put it down as a joke since Amazon clearly has the money to invest in one of its top shows, but I don't think they understand its popularity or its potential. For example, Invincible episodes were released on Prime every Thursday, and Reacher episodes were also released at the same time every Thursday. But how come Amazon put Reacher on the front page and not Invincible? Anyways.
Don't get me wrong, I'm hyped for the future of Invincible. I want to see more of J. Jonah Omni-Man's character development and more scenes of Invincible getting beat up.
I want more Battle Beast and Alan the Alien. I want Thrag. I want Conquest.
I want...
And so far, Season 3 is releasing less than a year after Season 2, and Season 4 is on the way. And Invincible creator Robert Kirkman said he plans to have 1 season released per year. So things are looking up, right? Right?
Are you sure?
Shortly after Invincible Season 2 ended in April 2024, a report detailing an overseas server breach was leaked to the public. It was discovered that the server actually contained evidence that a North Korean animation studio had completed work on multiple shows, including Invincible Season 3. I mean, it's not a stretch. We already know Kim Jong-un likes reading manga and watching anime, especially for some reason teen romance anime. Things first got suspicious when unpublished drafts and animatics for Invincible and other shows were discovered on an unprotected North Korean server, along with documents in Chinese and Korean containing instructions for animators. This would mean that Invincible's production company, Skybound Entertainment, and other American studios have indirectly collaborated with North Korea's animation industry, which is significant since any business with North Korea is typically subject to
harsh and unjust economic sanctions imposed on North Korea by the United States.
Sanctions.
However, it's likely not directly the fault of the show's producers, since they would obviously not want their show to be tied in any illegal activity, though they would need to take more drastic measures to track where their work gets outsourced. Before we get to that, we need to dive into the history of North Korean animation. The Korean animation industry has an extensive history. South Korea has become a major player in animation, with large studios like Studio Mir and Digital E-Mation collaborating with major studios on several productions. However, North Korea's involvement in animation is less well known. During the separation of the Koreas following World War II, the North created a state-owned animation studio in their capital, Pyongyang. It was called the Korean April 26th Animation Film Studio, named after the day the Korean People's Army was created. The films and shows they produced were primarily used for propaganda, aiming to teach children patriotic messages about defending their land. This was fairly similar to the films made by the Soviet Union during the Cold War. The studio, also called Scientific Educational Korea Studio, or SEK, expanded over time and began to work on animation outsourced by foreign studios. By the 1980s, SEK Studio had employed 600 people, including 20 directors, and had produced over 200 films. At the turn of the century, they had more than 1,500 workers, and some of their original films were even submitted at film festivals. They even won an award.
Hate is 'cause they ain't us.
Exactly.
But what kind of work does SEK Studio do exactly?
Hey, no, stop.
Animation projects have various areas of production, such as drawing up the storyboard, backgrounds and characters, scanning and compositing, and recording audio and dialogue, just like I'm doing right now.
Boom!
Currently, most of SEK's work involves the first process, where animators draw up certain scenes and then paint and edit the frames. In other words, basic but necessary animation work. Foreign studios have commissioned SEK for this work, and as of the 2000s, 2000s, they had deals with over 70 companies to do such work. They achieved this by using cheap labor, which gave them an edge in the industry, and enabled them to work on animation globally, including from countries like Russia, France, Italy, Spain, and even Hollywood productions. The studio has actually worked on American projects such as Transformers the movie, The Simpsons movie, the Futurama movie, and even episodes of shows like Avatar The Last Airbender and the 2003 Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. But how was a North Korean studio able to work on these movies, considering the international sanctions placed on the country? Well, in 1998, South Korea passed the first Sunshine Policy, which aimed to foster quote-unquote peaceful coexistence between the two Koreas, both culturally and economically. This naturally led them to collaborate in animation, specifically with SEK Studio and South Korea's Iconic Studio. The result of this partnership was a movie called Empress Chung. And I really wish that I could link some shady site for people to watch it on, but the movie's actually considered lost media since it's not available anywhere for viewing. It wasn't screened in public theaters either, though it was believed that the movie was screened in North Korea. And it didn't help that the US Department of Treasury placed harsh sanctions on SEK and any Chinese companies that worked with them as part of larger sanctions on North Korea. The partnership between the Koreas was ultimately brief, and new iterations of the Sunshine Policy have started and ended over the years due to politics. So far, there have been no more direct collaborations between SEK and South Korean studios that we know of. However, under Kim Jong-un's rule, SEK has made 50 new episodes of the classic animated show Boy General, which was widely popular in the 80s and 90s. They also made Gojumo, another historical animated show. I mean, it's a no-brainer for Kim. He loves patriotism for North Korea, and he loves animation. So he's killing two birds with one nuke. SEK Studio has since mostly worked with Chinese companies, even establishing a studio space in Beijing. Companies outsource lots of their animation work to China due to lower labor costs. However, some Chinese companies outsource that work to North Korean animators, and it's through this work that they're currently able to work on the movies and shows that we're familiar with. This may have gotten SEK into some trouble because in December 2021, they were accused by the US Treasury of, quote-unquote, exploiting North Korean workers to earn foreign currency and avoid sanctions on North Korea. And that leads us to the issue with Invincible. According to a report made by 38 North, a man named Nick Roy discovered a cloud storage server with a North Korean IP address in late 2023. The server was incorrectly configured, meaning anyone can see its contents and what it contained. North Korea supposedly uses these servers for animation work because their IT workers, like most of the nation, don't have direct internet access. Only Kim gets that privilege. As a result, they need approval and oversight to use computers with internet access to submit their animation work. Roy observed an unknown individual uploading new files to the server every day for months. Those files contained the results of the day's work, instructions and comments in Chinese from the production company, and subsequent translations in Korean. The server logs were also examined by researchers from a security company called Mandiant, and revealed that while most of the server logins were through VPNs, a few had their IP addresses traced. One of them was traced to Spain, while the rest of them were traced to Chinese cities along the North Korean border, which typically host quote-unquote politically reliable North Korean workers. It's highly likely this work is done by SEK because, let's face it, there is no competition in North Korea's animation industry. There's no Pixar versus DreamWorks, no MAPPA versus WIT, nothing like that. SEK is simultaneously first and last, mid and peak, the worst and the best that Kim's Crib has to offer. But enough talk. Let's get into what specifically was found on the server. First up was Invincible Season 3. A server document was labeled with the show's name and a company named Filtermite Pants LLC. Filtermite Pants?
The stills seem to be specifically from episode 5, and having seen these leaked stills long before watching the episode, it was kind of obvious that some of the animation was outsourced. I'm not certain as to how many scenes were animated by North Koreans, but I mean, look at this. Like, for anyone who thought the rest of the season was mid-animation, not me, but other people, then I don't know what you're going to think about this.
Next up was an animated superhero show made for the streaming service Max called Iyanu Child of Wonder. Then there was the anime Dahlia in Bloom. There were also files that translated into Cat that were labeled with Ikachi Apilka, which is a Japanese animation studio. There were also files on the British kids animated show Octonauts, and an unknown series that was labeled Dalian's Shepherd Boy Animation. Now, all this makes it look like Amazon and other companies cut big corners financially and ethically to make their show for cheap. I mean, I wouldn't put it past them. but nothing outright implies that these companies knew that North Koreans were working on their projects. For instance, Skybound almost immediately released a statement saying that they had, quote-unquote, no knowledge of any North Korean companies working on our animation, and that they notified the proper authorities about the issue. I mean, fair's fair. It would have been against their best interests to do this intentionally. It's most likely a case of the main production companies outsourcing some of their work to other studios, notably ones that are cheaper to hire, and then the studios outsource some of that work to even cheaper teams, like the ones from SEK Studio. So any work done by North Koreans wouldn't have been known by the show's main producers because it's so far down the line. All in all, what are the implications of this? The fact that the server was largely used to store files related to animation suggests that there could be other servers for North Korean organizations doing other international work, like IT projects and software development. However, this isn't the first time that companies were aware of this kind of work being done. Back in 2022, the US government warned that companies could be unintentionally breaching US and UN sanctions by using North Korean labor whenever they outsource their work. Another problem is that these users often fake their backgrounds by using VPNs and posing as other ethnicities when communicating virtually. As a result, the US government advocated for stronger measures to be put in place so that companies know exactly who they're hiring.
You've got to do better.
Things like doing video interviews, background checks could help identify their employees more accurately rather than working with an anonymous profile pic online. These will probably need to be strictly checked and regulated, especially in the age of AI where even video footage can be altered in real time. Later in 2023, American law enforcement reported that North Korean workers paid an American resident $400 per month to host laptops on their internet connection so that they could work through the American internet, all while seeming American due to the American IP address from the American laptops. America. The case led to the US updating its guidelines for spotting North Korean IT workers. However, since SEK Studio and other workers are still getting work internationally, it's hard to enforce American sanctions on a global scale. The entire situation just highlights the need for US animation companies to be much better informed about all the players involved in their projects.
If I were Amazon Skybound, I would focus less on cutting costs and more on cracking down on outsourcing, partly to prevent situations like this, and also to invest into more legal animation work, be it locally in America, or if you still want to go global, then give animators in France a try. And a budget, please.
And hopefully, whoever may be animating shows like Invincible, whether it's Americans, Chinese, or even North Koreans, please consider changing up the animation just a little bit.
Please listen to me.
I mean, what we have is decent, but I'm not asking for much. Just some more compositing, creative lighting here and there, no biggie. But seriously, things are indeed looking up for an... That's it for me. If you want more videos on North Korean cinema, let me know in the comments below. I'm open to suggestions for the channel. Take care.
The night, like it's the 4th of July. 'Cause Kimmy, you're a fire.